With every episode, the bold, confident, cheeky boy was becoming more muted, while his brother, the quiet, subdued one, still too young to fully understand what was going on, appeared to blossom. It was becoming clear that William was taking onto his young shoulders the burden of responsibility for his parents' well-being and happiness. He saw the newspapers and the television news, witnessed the sarcasm and shouting, felt the corrosive atmosphere, but because he loved both his parents, his loyalty and emotions were torn down the middle. Fortunately, they were not the only providers of care in his young life, and it was perhaps the stability that came from the other people around him that prevented him from careering off the rails when everyone else seemed to be hell-bent on self-destruction. One of these people was a ditzy young aristocrat called Alexandra Legge Burke, known as Tiggy, whose mother, Sean, and aunt, Victoria, were both ladies-in-waiting to Princess Anne. Tiggy was taken on as an aide to Richard Aylard, but swiftly moved sideways as a female presence in the boy's life and to act in loco parentis when, under the terms of the separation, they were with Charles but he had commitments elsewhere. It was a magical appointment. Tiggy was 28 and a bundle of fun, something between a loving, liberal mother and a slightly wild big sister. She was a nursery school teacher who had a delightful rapport with children of all ages and temperaments, whom she called her Tiggy Wigs. She said of her royal charges, "I give them what they need at this stage: fresh air, a rifle and a horse. She, their mother, gives them a tennis racket and a bucket of popcorn at the movies." William and Harry took to her like ducks to water, but their mother once again grew frightened that she was being usurped. Meanwhile, another crisis was brewing. The veteran writer and broadcaster, Jonathan Dimbleby, had spent 2 years working on a double project: a television documentary about Charles and a biography, which he had managed to persuade the prince to authorize. He was given unrestricted access to the archives at St. James's Palace and at Windsor Castle, where an entire floor is filled with documents and memoranda accumulated over the last 4 decades. I have also been free to read his journals, diaries and many thousands of the letters which he has written assiduously since childhood, Dimbleby wrote. Not only have I drawn heavily from this wealth of original material, but I have been free to quote extensively from it. Nor has the prince discouraged past and present members of the royal household from speaking to me. Likewise, at his behest, his friends and some of his relatives have talked about him openly at length, almost all of them for the first time. The documentary was called, Charles, the Private Man, the Public Role. It ran for 2.5 hours and attracted 14 million viewers, many of whom understood for the first time what the prince actually did when he wasn't playing polo. But what most people remembered about the film ran to no more than 3 minutes. Dimbleby asked Charles about his infidelity. "Did you try to be faithful and honorable to your wife when you took on the vows of marriage?" "Yes," said the prince, and after a brief and rather anguished pause added, "until it became irretrievably broken down, us both having tried." When asked about Camilla, he said, "She was a great friend of mine. She has been a friend for a very long time." At a press conference the next day, Richard Aylard, who had overseen the project, confirmed that the adultery to which the prince had confessed was indeed with Mrs. Parker Bowles. His reasoning was sound enough, even if the results were not. The question had to be asked because after the Morton book, the taped phone calls and everything else that had gone before, it was the only thing the public was interested in. How he should answer it was a tough choice. The prince could have refused to answer, but that wouldn't have stopped the paparazzi who followed him and Camilla and made their lives so difficult. He could have lied, but that was morally unacceptable, and if and when the paparazzi did catch the two of them together, he would be shown to be a liar. Or he could tell the truth, which he did, naively believing that the public would understand that he committed adultery only after the marriage had irretrievably broken down. "Not fit to reign," ran the Daily Mirror headline, and other front pages took a similar tone. Diana went down to Ludgrove to talk to the children. As she said in her Panorama interview, "I put it to William particularly, that if you find someone you love in life you must hang on to it and look after it. And if you were lucky enough to find someone who loved you, then one must protect it." William asked me what had been going on and could I answer his questions, which I did. He said, was that the reason why our marriage had broken up? And I said, well, there were 3 of us in this marriage and the pressures of the media was another factor, so the two together were very difficult. But although I still loved Papa, I couldn't live under the same roof as him, and likewise with him. In answer to what effect she thought her explanation had on Prince William, she said, well, he's a child that's a deep thinker and we don't know for a few years how it's gone in. But I put it in gently, without resentment or any anger. It was Dimbleby's book that followed in the autumn, simply called The Prince of Wales, or more precisely its serialization in the Sunday Times, which did the most damage. Inevitably sensationalized and cherry-picked, it gave the impression that Charles was a whinger whose parents had never shown him any affection, that he had loved Camilla for most of his adult life and never loved the wife his father had bullied him into marrying. The prince no doubt thought it would be a good vehicle for delivering his message about the serious issues that consumed his time. Instead, it turned into an own goal of staggering proportions. His parents were left hurt by the portrayal Charles gave of his childhood and bemused that he should have agreed such access. And Andrew Parker Bowles felt honor-bound to formally bring his marriage to Camilla to an end. They were divorced the following January and he married his long-term girlfriend. Sir John Riddell was amazed that his advisors had ever allowed it to happen. Everyone was told this book would finally show what a marvelous person he was. And people were bored out of their wits by business in the community and the prince's trust. They wanted to know about their private life. We're interested in who they're going to bed with, except we got rather bored by that because we couldn't keep up with it. And just as the excitement over one book started to wane, there was another hot on its heels. James Hewitt, having licked his wounds, decided to tell the writer Anna Pasternak about his 5-year love affair with Diana. Princess in Love hit the bookshelves in September 1994. The Queen can't have been the only person wondering what revelations would dominate the headlines next in this battle between the Prince and Princess of Wales, and which of them could inflict the most damage on their 2 sons. The answer wasn't long in coming.